as well afterwards. Good, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Dominique. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you to all the school kids who've joined in as well from all over the place. So thank you all very much. And thank you to all of you who are going to be watching this on the YouTube channel as well. I'd love to introduce Dominique Valente, the consummate author of the Starfell series. Thank you for joining us, Dominique.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I hope you're all doing very well. So Starfell is set in a world that is very different to ours. There's magic, witches, forgotten tellers, cloud dragons, and monsters who make the very best of friends. And I'm going to start sharing my
Well, I'll tell you, before you do that, I will disappear. Okay. But yeah, thank you for joining us. And guys, for the next half an hour, Dominique is going to be giving you a little guided tour and doing all sorts of stuff. I'll be back in half an hour taking your questions. So do teachers get the questions on the Q&A function. Yeah. So I'll see you in a bit. I'll leave it with you, Dominique.
Okay. Thank you. Just bear with me. So, as I was saying, Starfell is a world that's very different to ours. Here, bathtubs make excellent boats. Some houses breathe, and occasionally trees will deliver mail. And in this world, magic doesn't work the way people think it should. And that's because it was nearly ripped away 1,000 years before by people who thought it was evil. But magic isn't good or bad, though. It's like life. It's what you do with it that counts. So when magic started to come back, there was a secret that most people had to learn, which is that magic never dies. It just waits until we're ready. And when it did return, it changed. So not everyone who's lucky enough to have a bit of magic these days gets the really impressive bits, like the ability to fly or turn an annoying relative into a pig, which I think would be quite useful if anyone's gone through lockdown with family members. And that's certainly the case for Willow Moss, who we meet in the first book. So Willow has an ability that, in her opinion, is rather humdrum. She has the ability to find lost things like shoes or socks or her neighbor's missing wooden teeth. And like I said, she doesn't think this is very special until the most powerful witch in all the land of Starfell comes to her door with the news that last week Tuesday has gone missing, and Willow must find the day in order to save it. So she takes along with her best friend Oswin, the monster from under the cat. I even have little figurines from a friend who made me an Oswin. And they go on an adventure in order to save the day. And along the way, she meets a botanist named Nolan sometimes, who uses his skills to tell the past, a troll named Calamity, and a dragon named Feathering. And together, they piece together what has happened. And then in book 2, Willow Moss and the Forgotten Tale, the good news is that using his plant skills, Nolan sometimes has managed to cross-pollinate 2 different species of plants. The bad news is that he's just seen that his kidnappers will be arriving imminently. So he sends a message via leaf mail to Willow to ask if she wouldn't mind trying to rescue him. Unfortunately, for both of them, Willow's magic has been misfiring ever since she got back from saving the lost day. So instead of making things appear, she's making them vanish instead. So she has to go about finding her friend the old-fashioned way, and along the way she meets new friends like the pirate wizard Holloway, who has 1 leg and a clouded eye, which has a magical ability, and he can turn things copper, including the Sudsphero, the copper bathtub boat, which they explore the waterways of Starfell together with. And together they go on a big adventure and meet a raven boy called Sprig to the very edge of Starfell and beyond. And from there we get to now, which is Starfell 3, which just came out 1 week ago today, which is Willow Moss and the Vanished Kingdom. And in book 3, Willow is finally able to attend schools, which I'm sure, like you guys, quite recently is quite exciting. But she's the first magical, like part of the first magical children who are able to attend non-magical schools. And everyone thinks this is really exciting. But Willow is not convinced. She can't understand why the Brothers of Will, who've always hated magic, are suddenly allowing people like her into school. And she's quite suspicious because why are they changing the rules? On their first day, she meets you can see her there, she meets an elf girl named Twist and a boy called Peg. And Twist can control the north wind, and Peg hasn't got magic, but he's got a really impressive brain. And together they piece together a mystery, one that involves the very source of magic itself and a long lost kingdom, and how all of this might just affect all the children of Starfell. And together they have to go on quite an epic adventure in order to save Starfell once again. When I started writing Starfell, when I started writing Starfell many years ago, I took with me everything that I loved from reading when I grew up. And one of the books that I loved the most was Enid Blyton's The Faraway Tree. And I still remember sitting in a classroom and being read that story by my teacher, and how incredibly blown away I was by this magic and this incredible enchanted world. And after that, my love affair with magic began, and as did my love affair with books. So when it came time to write my own story, magic was always going to be a big part of it. But another part of it was that I grew up with a disability, and I was born without an arm, so I only have part of my left hand, and I felt quite different. And one of the ways that reading really helped me is that I understood that we're all different in our own ways. So I read books like Anne of Green Gables with heroines like Anne, who was an orphan, or Little Women with Jo March, who was a writer, but didn't really fit into her family. She so wanted to almost have the traditional boy role, which wasn't available to her at that time. And what I realized is that these things that can make us different often make us stronger. And when it came time to writing Willow, I wanted to explore that in a sort of metaphorical way by giving her an ability that to her might have not seemed as special or as important. And that's why I gave her the power of finding lost things. So that's one of my challenge for you, which is to think of a magical ability that might be slightly rubbish, but is actually really useful. So for instance, like obviously we'd all like to fly or blow things up, or like Willow's mum, speak to the dead, which I suppose actually would be quite useful. But what if you had something that seems rubbish but is actually really good? So for example, what if every time you opened your bread tin, a loaf of bread appeared, and that was your only ability? And on the surface, that might seem like quite a rubbish power, but actually, if you really think about it, you could end up feeding the entire world. How useful is that? Whereas flying just, benefits you. So if you can think of any ideas like that, and maybe just share them with Ben and I, and we could read them up. I think I've got one you, half of you being invisible. Not sure how that works. Only half. Tidy the house with a switch of a hand. I love that one. That would be the best ability, actually. Anything else? The power to make rubbish disappear. That's amazing. Change the way things taste. Oh, yes. Always know what the time is without having to look at the clock. The Clock by Miss Fernandez. That is awesome. That's a really useful ability. I love these. Turn sweets to vegetables by Jasmine. I'm very proud of you, Jasmine, because I think I would want to do it the other way around, turn vegetables to sweets. The power to make toast perfectly. That's great. Be anywhere in the world when you click your fingers. But I think that's like that's not a I would say that's a very powerful, very cool ability. I love these. Now these are great. Okay, so like I said, growing up, I loved reading, and I took all of these things into who I became as a person, as Dom, as a little girl growing up in South Africa. And I think even the stories that I love today still always contain these sorts of elements, from nature to magic and that kind of thing. And when I was about 9 years old, I realized I finally discovered what an author was, that these books that I'd always loved was written by real people, which I realized is quite late enough to realize that at 9. But when I did realize it, I realized it in a very big way. And I made this, it was almost like a soul pact with myself that one day I was going to become an author. And so I remember sitting down and writing my first story, but there was a big problem. So you know that kid, that one in your class who the teacher's always talking about their writing and how it brings a tear to their eyes or is so beautiful. You know that kid? Well, I used to sit next to that kid, and this bugged me quite a lot. So eventually, what I would do is I would just go back and I'd keep trying to become that kid eventually. But what I did learn from not being that kid at first was that I learned the value and importance of trying, and also writing stories just for yourself. And after quite a few years, eventually I sort of slightly became that kid in high school. And not in a very big way, but to me it was major. So I got some poems, very angsty, teenagey type things, put in the school yearbook. And to me it was like, winning the Nobel Prize for literature, because I'd been so praise deprived until then. So my poor teachers. But it had finally unlocked something in me. And after that, I went to university, and after that, I became a journalist, which in hindsight wasn't the world's best career move for me, because it's a little bit like, being Luna Lovegood in the Slytherin common room, because the newsroom is pretty tough, and I was in some ways dealing with quite hard news. And so to escape that world, I used to write. And one of those stories became it actually became the world of Starfell. And that's my other writing challenge for you, because in Starfell, it's its own separate world, and there is no way to get there. There's no portal. But yeah, that's my writing challenge there. So if there was a portal to Starfell, what would you make it be? Now I have some conditions, because in some of the children's fantasy that has a portal, like say Narnia with the wardrobe, or Harry Potter with platform 9 3/4, they first of all they're a fixed place, and second of all they are quite ordinary. So on the surface you would never see them as special. So that's why no one knows. It's just a wardrobe. It's just a wall. Or okay, and in the faraway tree, it is a tree, but you wouldn't, even though a tree is beautiful and looks kind of different, you wouldn't expect that different worlds go there. So that would be my writing challenge to you guys now, the next one. What would you make the portal to Starfell be? The cupboard under our sink in classroom 6 SN. That's amazing. Oh, a bookshop entering. Yeah, I love that. A waterfall. Oh, I love that. A TV. That's cool, Jasmine. Ooh, a staircase in the middle of the woods. I love these. Secret passage in a library. A whiteboard. That's cool. And maybe you have to write. Write yourself into the story like that. Vending machine. That's super cool. I could see that in like a really Ready Player One kind of thing. I don't know. Whiteboard again. A light switch. A book. That's quite nice. I love that. A mobile phone. I think that, a picture frame under your bed. Yep, you could grab the monster under the bed with you. A website, that would be cool. A washing machine. A mirror, I like that. Oh no, a toilet. Lots of 6SN like this. A toilet. Ugh. Would you step into the toilet? I don't know how that would work. Hopefully you don't have to use the toilet and it takes you. Oh. A rubbish bin. Guys, is this how you want to get into Starfell? Through a rubbish bin. Okay. Big Ben. It's so cool. Yeah, because they worked on Big Ben for quite a long time. So maybe it was, getting his magical portal ready, I like that. The drain in the bathtub, that's awesome. A bookshelf. The fridge. I love these. They're great. Okay, well, I think that's it from our writing challenge and everything. So I think I'm ready to take questions if you guys are. Don't know if I've...
Yeah, do you want to lose the share so we can?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. So that was amazing. I love some of those ideas as well from all the audience. That was very
amazing.
Funny. I thought our bookshop in Tring would be a great portal into Starfell.
I agree.
Sorry, that was my idea, everyone. I do apologise for that.
No, I love that. Or like a specific book on the shelf. That's brilliant.
Lovely. Right. This is the time for questions. So you'll have seen there's a Q&A function, teachers, along the bottom. I've already got a couple, so I'm gonna focus on those. Let me just, whilst the questions are coming in thick and fast, and do credit the student who asks them. Let me just ask a couple. So, Dominique, how long have you been writing for? When did you start writing?
Starfell itself came about when I was about 19, and I'm in my late 30s now, so you do the maths, long time. I've been writing since I was about 19, and then as an author, I'd say for the last 5 years, because I also write under a pen name. I write women's fiction under the name Lily Graham.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that. That's amazing. And that the experience of being published so young at 19, that must have been...
No, I wasn't published. No, sorry. No, I was only published from like 30. So,
okay.
Yeah, so my whole thing about, making this pact with myself at 9, it only happened, well, I mean, to be fair, I was published as a journalist at probably about 20, 22, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that the build up to getting published for the first time, that was a fairly lengthy period then. But so that experience, talk me through the experience of actually getting published for the first time and the kind of.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I ended up writing for, and there's when people say to you, "Oh, it's so easy to write for children," and they really need to come and speak to me, because I found it much easier to get. Because, like I said, I'd been writing Starfelt since I was 19. So the plan was always to write under my own name, which is Dominique Valenti, which sounds like the made-up name, I realize. So I blame my parents and then my Portuguese husband for my slightly exotic name. But anyway, I had been writing Starfelt for a long time, and it was very complicated. And there were so many different drafts. And I mean, the whole concept of dealing with a missing day, and in a way that was quite readable, took me quite a long time to make it seem like quite a simple thing. And so I sent it out and got lots of rejections in the beginning, and then sort of took a break and I wrote a women's fiction novel, and then that got picked up, and then suddenly I had this other career I didn't at all plan, and I was probably about 5 books in with my other pen name before I actually got Starfelt right, and it took a long time. So I got so it was about 4 years before it finally got an agent even, and I got lots of agent rejections. So it was in the last round before this book, 22 agents rejected it. 2 finally came back, and then I was in this amazing position of having to choose my agent, which I did because I just sort of fell in love at first sight. And then from there, it was this really strange thing where as soon as I got an agent, we worked on it a little bit, and then we put it on submission and it went to auction. And I don't say this to brag, but just to honestly to show how subjective writing is. And, so anyone who's thinking about, getting out there, it's just about trying to believe in your story, believe in yourself, and write the stories you love from your heart. Because I think I could have easily given up on Starfelt, but there was something in me that just, because I'd put so much of my heart and soul into it, and I thought, well, on the last draft before it finally got picked up, I was like, you know what, I'm going to write the story that if it's sitting there one day in my bottom drawer and my grandkids find it, it's something I was proud of, that I loved. And that's the one that eventually, was picked up.
So you had to have a different agent for the children's books as compared to your.
No, yeah. So the way I do it is I published. I have a direct relationship with my editor, Andrew Lily Graham. So it was quite different. So I had to find a whole, an agent that would deal with children's and that kind of thing. And so often there's not. Your agent doesn't represent everything. They might not really want to do women, or they don't have the context. So I just sort of have my direct relationship with my Hachette, which is where I publish Lily Graham, and then I have the separate world, and it's nice. I think it's 2 separate sides of my personality.
Yeah. Right, let's deal with a few questions from our so Jasmine in 6S, what made you start writing? Was it just a passion for it you'd had as a child, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was exactly that. It was these stories that had honestly given me so much joy. And I think when it finally came time to write my own, I found that there was just as much joy in writing them as there was in reading them, especially when you create your own world, which I did with Starfelt. So I could fill it with all the things that I loved, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and writing is still fun for me. I mean, it can be tricky, but I think the best thing to try and do is to write what you love so that it is fun.
I can see Jasmine's asked other questions. Well, let's stick with another Jasmine question, which is very good. Who is your favorite book character? Now, I suspect she might be thinking from any book, or is that just within your own characters? Let's deal with both. So what's your favorite character written by another author?
Ooh, probably Anne Shelley from Anne of Green Gables. Yeah, I think I relate so much to her. I don't know if anyone's ever read the books, but she's such an alive character in so many ways, and she's so flawed and funny and different. And I really can credit my love for nature from reading the Anne books growing up.
Yeah, Anne of Green Gables is such an influential book, and we we've ended up selling all different versions of it, from the beautiful bound versions and what have you. So no, it's a very popular book. And what's the favorite character in your books?
Oh, that's a bit like asking you if you have a favorite child. But I would say probably Oswin. He is a mixture, my monster from under the bed character, Oswin, who is, he looks like a cat, but he's not. He's a kobold. And if you call any attention to the fact that he actually looks like a cat, it causes mayhem. So he's a mixture of my grumpy snore monster bulldog, Fudge, and my husband. Because my husband has his own funny lexicon, and I've smushed them together and I made Oswin. And he's so much fun to write because he's so grumpy, and it's sometimes nice to write characters who are not always behaving very well.
So Paige asks, what made you interested in reading? And I know you referenced the Enid Blyton Enchanted Tree, but was there what did interest you in reading when you were young?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many moments, I think, that led to me becoming a voracious reader. I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I have 2 older brothers, and I don't know if anyone else is the 3rd child. When you're the youngest, so my brothers would do these wonderful things, which is pretend to play with me and then actually run away. So sometimes left alone. And I had a really, like Granny Flossie in my book, I had a really lovely granny who brought me this huge box of books because she had a late child. So my aunt is about 6 years older. So she brought all these books, and I set myself this challenge to read this entire box of books that she brought. And one of them was the story of Helen Keller, who was born deaf, blind, and dumb. She couldn't speak. And her incredible story. There was even Braille at the back. So I've forgotten it now, but I'd slightly taught myself how to do the Braille. And I just remember just being so blown away that books could do this for you. They could take you on these incredible adventures. And it's still true now for me.
Yes. Ross asks, what is a very difficult question for you to answer, but which is your favorite book that you have written?
Oh, that I've written?
Yes.
I think it always becomes like the book you've just written, because I must say the 3rd book was written during, so the first draft was written just before lockdown. And then the second draft was written, like most of which became the story, was after lockdown, and it was really, really tricky. And the 3rd book in a series is often quite tricky. But it took so long, and eventually I think it became my favorite because I really gave myself permission to do something like really crazy things and explore like elvish traditions and reinvent the wheel. And there's like a city that's alive, the marble is alive in these streets, and I created all these, like, there's its own magic system. So that was a lot of fun to do.
Very good answer. And I have to say, every author we ask that question, and we've done a few of these children's events, they always say the one there, which is entirely the right answer, I have to say. And even I'm sure, I know your publicist is watching as well, she would entirely agree as well. Charlie, this is a good question. Who would you go to Starfell with?
Ooh, that is such a good question. Starfell with. Probably my dog Fudge. I really would like to introduce her to Oswin. I would love to see how they'd get along. I think it'd be quite funny. And then also probably my husband, because I think he seems like a grumpy person, but he's quite silly, and there's quite a lot of things that I think we could do. Like, I'd love for us to go and get our brooms in the broom woods and find out which brooms would match our personalities. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Very good. That's a great answer. And Alex asks a great question. Actually, it's one that I was meaning to come on to, which is about the artwork and the illustrations on the book. I guess when you first wrote Starfell, there was no visual, there was nothing to look at. There were no illustrations, nothing. So talk me through that moment where you first met the Starfell book in illustration form.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm so lucky to work with Sarah Warburton. I mean, her artwork is so amazing, and I mean, just even from the tiny, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the latest one with, it's got like star charts, and it's just so amazing. And I think the first illustration I actually got was this image of Willow, and so I didn't really know who Sarah was. I mean, I'd sort of maybe seen a few of her picture books, but I didn't know how it would work in middle grade. And because we don't get to choose as novelists, you don't get to choose the illustrator, you know. And my editor came back and said, look, we're thinking of Sarah. And I said, oh, her work's really beautiful. But you just never know. And she sent back the first image of Willow. And it was just so perfect that I literally, you know, so it's corny, but I literally burst into tears. But it was like such happy tears because, like I said, I've been living with this world since like I was 19. And everything was like that. And to this day, when I get something from Sarah and I drop the world, I'm so excited, and I do a squeal because she gets it so perfectly. You know, I'm a very visual thinker, so sometimes I'll even send her I'll send her like visualization. So for the latest one for Twist, because she controls the north wind, one of the pictures I sent her for reference was of Bridget Jones. I don't know if you know that famous car scene where Bridget's hair is all up, because she'd drawn her like perfectly, but her hair wasn't quite as wild. And then I sent that, and she was like, "Oh, nailed it!" You know. So she also said that she enjoys getting the descriptions from me, which is great. So yeah, no, working with her is an absolute dream come true. And she even does extra bits, which is unheard of. You know, so like HarperCollins will say, "Well, we commissioned these," but she's done like 10 extra ones because I think she enjoys the story. So I'm very, very blessed.
No, it's such an important part of the illustrations. And for this event, and I know that many of the kids who are watching this saw the interview with Hannah Gold, and I don't know if you've seen the last one. The illustrations on those,
gorgeous,
just extraordinary. And I certainly know of quite a few of them. Kids watching this have got those books. But let's have a look. Malika has written a question. What inspires you to write books? I mean, do you have an ongoing inspiration that keeps you going, that drives you forward? Or is it just your innate love of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, partly it's because we've agreed on, you know, it's the reality of that becomes like your job. But at the same time, I always want it to be fun. So like I don't ever really want to be writing a story that I don't enjoy, because it takes so long to do it. Especially Starfell, for me, it takes a really, really long time. It goes through so many drafts because I write the first draft as a sort of discovery thing, and as if I'm telling myself the story. And I always think that if you can laugh at your own jokes or have fun along the way, and I try and, like, you know, just take the noise down and enjoy the process. And I'm constantly on like the lookout. So anything slightly unusual, even plants, like a lot of the plants in most of them are made up, but there'll be like, there's one that's called the Carvery that I was watching, like, say, Gardener's World, because, you know, I love gardens, and apparently it like can sting somebody and you can go numb in that area for like up to 9 months. So I'm like, in the file, you know. So things like that, I'm constantly like filtering the world to see, you know, or funny names. We'll be driving and I'll find a funny name or funny street, and I'm like, that has to go in there. So yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a question about funny names in a bit, but let's. Drake asks a very good question. Have you thought about writing a different genre of story? I mean, I think he's probably referring to children's books. Just talk me through the genre that you write in with your adult books.
So, I mean, it couldn't be more different if I tried with my adult books, because it's historical fiction. So it's really, really dark. Some of it's like World War II, that kind of high stakes drama, a lot of research, very intense. So I tend to find Starfell is a big escape from that. So I enjoy both, but yeah, this is a.
Could you move your historical fiction into a children?
You see, I wouldn't want to because I'm doing that, you know, and I think, yeah, I think when it comes to children's, it's probably always going to be a little bit weird and wonderful. So I think I would write maybe a little bit more like older, so like upper middle grade, and maybe more magical realism. I also would love to do like sci-fi stuff. I love sci-fi, you know. But yeah, I can't see me actually writing historical fiction for children. Just, no.
I do. I tell you what, Michael has written the question exactly from our previous discussion. Where do you get your character names from?
Oh, great. So I spend a lot of time thinking about character names. So most of them, to some degree, have a plant reference because plants are a big part of the magic. So willow moss is like, that's an actual plant, and they've all got names like that. And then I also try to match it up to some of their abilities. So like Nolan, sometimes the Forgotten Teller, you know, I love the idea of sometimes and time and that kind of thing. It will take me a long time. So for instance, with Twist, her name's Twist Howling. And then her family, the elvish aunts, are called the Howling aunts, and they all control a different wind. So it takes me a long time to really think that. But, you know, I suppose that's the nice thing about children's books is you can have these names that are like sort of dead on the nose, but as whimsical and as silly as possible.
Yes.
Generally.
Abbas has asked a good question. If you could choose a power to add to your main character, to Willow Moss, what would it be? I might add, Abbas, you're talking to the author, so the author has the ultimate power to do anything because it's a book. But, is there any other power Willow Moss could have?
Well, I mean, it might be a bit of a spoiler, but you know, in the second book, she does develop another power, you know, and it's quite an impressive one as well. And it's sort of been given to her by a very unusual source, so that's pretty cool. I'm not sure. I'd give it another one. Yeah.
Kyla, how long does it take to write a book? Do you work on a sort of a normal cycle in terms of writing your next novel?
Yeah. So it's usually about a year, and a lot of that is just thinking at first to get the ideas. So my first draft will, like the actual writing of it can, like each draft can take maybe 6 weeks to 2 months. But like I would say my first drafts are quite rough and there's not a lot of detail. And it's basically almost just like a sketch of where like the arc should go. And then I go back and I keep adding layers and layers and layers, and it takes a long time. So it literally can take almost an entire year to get from, you know, that first. And I will do so many more drafts of Starfell than I will of my historical novels. So that's why I say people who come to me and say, oh, when are you going to write, you know, luckily they don't say that to me, but they say that to a lot of children's authors, when are you going to write a real novel, or, you know, and to me that's ridiculous because I probably spend twice as long on a Starfell novel.
At what point in the process does the illustrator get involved?
Yeah, so and that also sort of makes it tricky because you've got to give them enough time, especially somebody like Sarah. I never ever want to make her life difficult, you know, so you want to give her enough time so she can have fun. So usually I think she gets involved. It's almost like that they start to brief her around about the 6 month, 7 month process, and then she'll do different stages. So like the cover probably gets done first, and then a few other little bits, and then we'll start seeing, because then we'll know like it's definitely going to be this character or that character. Then she'll start sketching those. But yeah, and then eventually she'll like maybe about 5 months before it's going to be published, then she'll get like the full book, and then she'll work on the rest of the stuff. That's just my process. I wouldn't say that that's the best process, but that's just how we've been doing it.
No. Listen, we've got 5 minutes left, and I've got stacks of questions to get through. Jasmine, she's had a couple of questions already, but I will ask this. It's a great question. Do you plan your books or do you just go straight into writing them? And I might add, I've asked so many authors that same question. You get so many different answers. I mean, there's some of the most incredible authors who they reveal the storyline at the same time the author sort of reads it. So they don't know what's going on. I mean, the Anne Cleeves, who writes the TV show Shetland, for instance, a really famous author. And she has no idea when she sits down in front of a blank piece of paper and starts writing. So what's your process?
Yeah, so mine's weird because it's a little bit of both. So I would say in the beginning, like the first book, I think I always knew like a little bit of where the story would go, but I didn't, and just little bits. So it would be like, if you're driving along a street and you can only see the post box at the end. So like I knew that's about as far as I knew. So when I wrote the first book, I knew, okay, I knew that Nolan sometimes was going to just, because because I was having a bad day, I decided to write the first page of the stuff, so I already had that, and I knew where that was going to go, just in that little page, and where that Nolan sometimes was going to be kidnapped, but I didn't know anything else. So half of the time it's, and by now I've had to know, and I had to work out quite a bit, but even a lot of it I only discover as I'm writing it. I find that for me, writing, I have to, even just to find out what I think, I have to like write it down to get it clear. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, so many questions. So you get, it's one line answers from now on, so we can get through these. Melita asks, if you hadn't become a writer, what would you like to have done or like to do?
Oh, be a florist.
Is that your display you made?
Yes, I made this myself.
Is that homegrown plants?
No, unfortunately.
No. Paige, great question. How many books are you planning to write in the Starfell series?
Ooh, so at the moment, without giving anything away, it's planned to be a 4-book series, but I'm hopeful for others. So.
Yes, I think there needs to be way more than 4, actually. Chloe, great question, Chloe. Writer's block. Do you ever get stuck for ideas?
Yes.
And what do you do in that process, in that sort of scenario?
So I go for walks a lot. So I'm very lucky where I live by the sea, and so I go for a really long walk. I find that sometimes my ideas never come to me sitting at my desk. They'll be in the shower, when I'm gardening, when I'm walking my dog. That's when something will happen. And I didn't believe that writer's block was a thing, but I did eventually get it, and lockdown was one of the things that did give it to me. So I think you need a change of pace, and that helps.
Yes. Class 6 asks, what's your writing process? I think we've covered that off, so I won't ask you to answer that. Shaniel asks a good question. Have you hidden yourself inside your Starfell books? I think, are you a character? Is there any character based on you?
Oh, I suppose to an extent they all are, so Willow is definitely, I would say she's probably my most autobiographical character in a way. I'm not as nice as Willow. I would just put that out there. I would say I'm a little bit Willow and then a little bit Oswin, like I can be a bit of a scaredy cat, about things.
Yes. Great one from Paige again. What is the next book title? And the choosing of the book title must be quite hard. But have you got a title for your 4th one?
No. So I mean, I can't even say it. I can't even, because it would give away and I don't think it's going to be that one. So it takes a while even to get that. Yes. The titles.
Gosh, look at the time. We're down to 1 minute. So I think, listen, I'm just going to read out all those who did ask questions, and Kakpa, Alex, Joe, Karina, Crystal, Zach, Iwo, Michael, Nissa. Thank you guys all for asking your questions. It's been an absolute honour to have the extraordinary Dominique Valente with us. Thank you to all the kids, all the forms, all the classes, and to all the teachers. In 2 weeks' time, we've got Anna James, you're a big fan of Anna James, aren't you, Dominique?
Oh yeah, she's wonderful. You're gonna love her.
That's 2 weeks' time. So she's extraordinary. She's Pages and Co, which is an amazing series of books. How many Pages and Co are there? Must be hundreds of them.
Oh, I think there's going to be 6 or might be even more, which is always good news. Yeah.
Lovely. Listen, it's clicked round to 45 minutes past now. So guys, thank you once again. Thank you, Dominique. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.